the case of buying a new home, that a certain deposit be put up in the case to cover potential vandalism of the home and non-payment over such and such a period of time. We put up a 10% deposit for a house right now. Suppose instead we put 10% or $10,000 up, which would pay the payments of the house for 10 years, and say if they fall behind for 5 years, we confiscate the house and use the other $5,000 to cover any further losses. But somebody else buys the house a year down the road, resumes the payments, then we refund the difference back to the person who lost the house, and we're exactly where we ought to be in terms of circulation, payment for consequences, and continual consumption of the house.
Likewise, so I'm just trying to understand it. If so, someone goes into business, they borrow $100,000. It's a requirement that they have to repay that $100,000 under a set schedule.
Right.
They burn the $100,000. They spend it on things which don't add value to the business, and they end up. Someone said,
"Well, that would be prevented there by." Largely be prevented by reasonable strictures of certifying creditworthiness. The Common Monetary Foundry looks at the income or proof. Excuse me.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what banks get it wrong all the time, don't they? And
yeah,
banks...
but they don't even apply all these. They don't apply reasonable, formula at any of this.
My experience of banking is that although yes, there's this incentive to get people to take on loans, but are we saying that there's this superior entity out there of people that can judge creditworthiness better than a business angel or a private equity person investing their own money?
At the very least, we can say this, that the same principles applied under mathematically perfected economy would inevitably succeed where they can't succeed under the purported banking system. So we know we're at least that much better off without any improvement at all. You see?
Okay. No, I'm not attacking. I'm really just trying to understand.
No. I understand you're not, but I'm just providing, what are obvious answers to me, and I hope they're not offensive. I mean, I have no, feeling or need to, offend. So, and it's hard. It's actually hard coming from your background to avoid, that. I'm trying to be careful here. You can slap me around if I get a little, out of line. But the thing is, so you can't do worse than the existent model. You've eliminated to the magnitude of 12 the likeliness of failure. I mean, that's a huge disparity, right? Well,
there. The reason I'm trying to get there is because you're using maths as the model, and I guess the assumptions of maths.
But it's not. But it's not restricted to that at all. The math is always subjected to the real life problems. In other words, I've been doing this for 43 years. The question you've asked, I asked myself. It's not only a legitimate question, it's a perfectly likely and reasonable question by anyone who's intending to understand this at all. I mean, you're entirely in line to ask the question. It's perfect, perfectly reasonable. But here's the facts of the matter are still also very simple. Under mathematically perfected economy, and under mathematically perfected economy only, is it constantly, not just possible, but can we constantly, is the remaining value of the represented property sufficient to recoup the ostensible losses, unless there's been some say vandalism of the property.
My question is does the model fail if people can't repay their loan?
No, because what you do, however, that's an implementation matter, which I leave up to the people. Certain societies, countries, states, counties, ages of people are more fearful and less inclined to resolve their problems than others. You know, here's the thing. If somebody doesn't pay under a system that payment must be obligated, we have to retire that circulation. Now, there's many alternatives for solving this. On the one hand, you can consider, if this person just did this of their own wanton negligence, you can consider it a crime, and you can hold them responsible. They don't get out of jail until they pay the difference that they've cost the system, until they catch up. I'm not suggesting that, but that's one possible, quote-unquote solution. It would be a solution to some societies. The thing is, you have to maintain a circulation which is always equal to the remaining value of represented property. So, for instance, you're not even a citizen of the country, but the country's allowed you to buy a home even though you're not a citizen. You get behind on your payments because some dream you had never comes to fruition, and you get all pissed off at everybody without justification, and you spray paint graffiti all of your house and disappear. Maybe we find you someday. Well, you're responsible for restoring the damages, and only any rightful, just society makes it incumbent upon the criminal to restore damages. This is what we do in any kind of lawsuit. So anything that we do in this system is obligated to maintain the obligatory schedule of payment, and they make that in any just implementation, they're going to make that incumbent upon the person or their heirs. Now, also realize that if we handle actual solution of social problems such as Social Security, Medicare, health insurance under mathematically perfected economy, instead of taking money from people, ostensibly investing it in schemes which it will only fail, robbing from those funds to do other things, and then making us pay doubly or triply afterward, as we are in this country and elsewhere in the world, instead we make it compulsive for a person to save so much as would maintain that standard of living in their adult life. Half their income then is going into these funds, which remain in their possession in their own accounts, while still maintaining an immediate six-fold increase in spendable income, or how far our spendable income goes under an immediate transformation to mathematically perfected economy. If a crime is committed and further funds are required of that committer of the crime, they can come out of those funds. There's a tremendous volume of funds, and what are we doing then? Well, we're depriving that person of the standard of living that they would have otherwise persisted in their retired life. You see, so there's a tremendous amount just to rely on right there. It isn't as if we can't get blood out of a turnip. Hey, you fell behind these many payments; they come out of your retirement. Until you're broke and penniless the rest of your life. What's more, you've got 6 more months to get out of the house because we think you've gone wacko. You can't be trusted. You have to downscale this mansion you're living in, and to a little shack, because this is what you're credit worthy of buying now that you've depleted these retirement funds that you were saving. We can only justify your credit worthiness in a little shack that actually is 18 pieces of sheet metal and 14 2x4s and 2 pounds of 16 penny nails. Dirt floor. That's what you're going to live in from now on.
Yeah, well, I get it. It's removing the moral hazard to being in business.
Yeah, but we account for these things with the same intelligent ways that we could now if we solved, the faults of the monetary system. But that's incumbent on the society. See, to perfect economy is to eradicate its faults. Now, if people were perfect and life went perfectly for all people, there would be no problems. How we address those is up to us, because And the reason that the fact of the matter is, it's easier to solve them now under mathematically perfected economy than it is under usury. You see, but to just there's no valid argument claiming, well, there's problems that would exist that don't exist now that we can't solve, or there's problems that we've never solved that we can never solve. I'm sorry, our problems are man-made, and so we can solve them. And the question is how we want to do it. We could say, oh, our friend so-and-so who's living in this mansion that they're no longer paying on because they just wanted to quit their job and do nothing, let's all feel sorry for him and support him. So instead of paying for just our own houses, we'll pay the money out of circulation for his house too. We might want to share certain losses or failure to perform obligations of certain kinds under certain circumstances. But those are things that are rightly left to a society because, number one, they might someday not even exist. There's no excuse for not paying for a house when, you can't even own an apartment now or live in an apartment. And you could own a house under mathematically perfected economy for a fraction of the cheapest apartment out there.
So let me ask, what's the difference between mathematically perfected economy and the Islamic banking model?
Oh, there's a huge difference. As they did with Christianity and Judaism, they redefined the term usury. They asserted that an ostensible different thing, interest, was permissible or legal somehow, but there's no prescription for whatever would make it legal or not ultimately engender the same consequences. And the purpose of explaining this was the purpose of my 1970s paper, Interest is Usury. Now, they've done the same thing with Islamic banking, and that is that instead of calling usury interest, they're calling it rent. They have a different method of collecting it, which actually, as I understand it, is apt to impose further limitations. And besides maladisposition, which exists in both implementations of usury, you have a depleted or deflationary circulation. So you suffer those same problems under Islamic banking. They simply manifest in different ways by means which have the same ramifications, but which are implemented slightly differently and are called a different thing, rent as opposed to riba in the case of Islam. In Islam, both the giving and taking of riba are outlawed, and so mathematically perfected economy is effectively, at least as best as I understand it, and I've discussed this intensively with Muslims for many years, mathematically perfected economy is basically the divine law of Islam as it is the meeting of divine law of Christianity and Judaism as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, it's I'm just trying to work through the practicalities.
All these questions are good, pal. So fire away.
So what you're saying is that fractional reserve banking is the effect, not the cause.
Right.
And that when you have interest,
it is, of course, if you'd interpret it in and of itself, more or less, it would be a further cause of further things. But in fact, you resorted to fractional reserve banking, and it is a consequence, not a cause. You've resorted to it because of the deficiencies of the original underlying principles that you're trying to live out without doing so, but can only resort to it in order to do so. And that's an absolute ramification of a precious metal monetary system in the case of growing or declining industry, but it's not necessarily a causative consequence of